Hi y'all. Thank you for joining me on another video. Oh my goodness, this is like the third or fourth take I've done. Um Usually the videos that are really important and can speak to someone, those are the ones that I usually have trouble with. Satan don't want this one to go out, but hopefully this one will be the final take. I want to talk to y'all something. Originally, I was going to go into more about dealing with really hard memories, like the memory that I've been having to deal with lately. And I may touch a little bit on how I'm doing on that. But I want something that happened today kind of made me change course on that. And that was, I went to go see a friend of mine, one that lives in a nursing home an hour and a half away from me. And one of my nieces lives in a town nearby. So I figured I'd go stop by real quick, see how she's doing, because I knew that she was getting ready to go through a divorce and stuff. So I wanted to see how she was doing. Well, some things she told me that broke this auntie's heart. And that, long story short, her future ex-husband was an abuser, isolated her as well. He was emotional and physically abusive to her. She didn't tell anyone, not even her mom. And that just broke my heart. I'm like, why, baby? Why did you not tell someone? You saw what I went through. You witnessed it to an extent. Um, and she's like, Auntie, I didn't tell anyone. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And she said that she only got married. She didn't want to get married. He did. And she only married him because she thought that would make him happy. And that he would be happy and things would be better. And that broke my heart. Because that is what I thought in my marriage. And pretty much every survivor I've talked to thought the same thing at one point. That if I was good enough wife, or I was pretty enough, or loving enough, or good in the bedroom enough, that it would make him happy. And the thing is, though, there's never enough. No matter what you can do, it's never enough. Early on in our marriage, he was very much into, my ex was very much into other women and getting other women's attention. By his own admission in later years, he even went so far as to put posters of other women on our bedroom wall. And I allowed it because, not knowing any better, I thought that was normal. And I didn't want to be that wife that was a nagging wife. The stereotypical nagging wife that, sitcoms and stuff portray that nobody would want to be married to. So I thought, if, well, this is normal, because he liked those magazines and stuff, and because he even asked me, he said, how do you feel about that? And not wanting to be that wife. I said, that's okay. I don't care where you get your appetite as long as you come home to eat. That was my philosophy. But the thing is, in him doing that, he got a very skewed sense of beauty. Not that I'm beautiful, because I know I'm not. I know I'm not beauty pageant material, runway material. I have no delusions of grandeur where that's concerned. But it gives people, when people are into stuff like that, it gives them a skewed sense of reality, because nobody can live up to what's in the magazines. I mean, the magazines are airbrushed, photoshopped, whatever you want to call it. How you see that picture of a female or a male is not how they look in real life. And it gave him the more he got into it, the more he got into fantasy idea of what a woman was. And it definitely was not me. I wasn't even close. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm pretty enough, caring enough, and a good enough wife, he'll love me. Y'all, at one point, I still have issues with food, and I don't have the best relationship with food, though my relationship with food is getting way better than it ever was. Going through therapy, that has helped tremendously. There was a time that I was actually making myself throw up as a punishment for eating what I perceived to be too much. And I felt like I ate too much, and I would get mad at myself and I'd make myself throw up. Thankfully, that didn't last too terribly long. But after that, I mean, he was part of why I didn't have a good relationship with food, but there are other issues not pertaining to my ex that caused it originally, and then he exacerbated it. But what I'm trying to say is, the reason an abuser is an abuser has nothing to do with you. Nothing whatsoever. They're an abuser because of their issues, whatever they are. Now, in my case, my ex is a narcissist. Oh, I mean, textbook narcissist. My therapist yesterday read me some stuff from a book that he's going over now about narcissism, that when he read it, I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like this person knew my ex. I mean, it's like he wrote the book knowing how my ex is, with my ex in mind. He had, everything that was written had my ex pegged to a T. It was almost creepy. Um, but and but it was also good because it explained things a little bit better about narcissists. Narcissists, in a nutshell, they have their true self and then their self that they create, a pseudo self, actually. And in front of everyone else, they show that pseudo self, but that pseudo self is larger than life. It's actually something that could never be obtained in real life. But that's their pseudo self. And anyone that threatens that pseudo self, like their victim, gets attacked even more. Because the issue was, he always portrayed this pseudo self, this larger than life self, and expected me to go along with the program and act like that was his true self when it wasn't. I mean, it was nothing like it. And because I wasn't acting like this pseudo self was his true self, I was a threat to that self. Because I was a threat to expose it. So the abuse happened, so I was attacked. And the kids, as they got older, the two older ones, were attacked because they weren't dealing with his bull anymore. And so they were a threat to his idea of how he was. And that's how narcissists act. I mean, the way this book said it was beautifully said. I can't say it like it was said in the book. But that's how narcissists are. And narcissists are abusers. Because, abusers aren't necessarily narcissists, but narcissists are abusers because they're self-centered. Or I shouldn't say that. Maybe there are some narcissists that aren't abusers. But narcissists are self-centered, self-focused. Everything revolves around them. They think way more highly of themselves than what they really are. They think they're all that in a bag of cookies, and they ain't even a bag of manure. And when you get an abuser that is a narcissist, they know how to manipulate. They know how to isolate you. And that's what they'll do. They will isolate you. Y'all, I had my family. I had some of my family, my mother and my sister, live in the same town I do. And yet, my ex had me convinced I had no help. That he had me convinced that I was isolated, even though my mom and my sister lived in the same town. And any one of my friends, or our friends even, I could have called for help. And yet he had me convinced that I was alone, that nobody cared. And that's what abusers do. And that's what this abuser did to my niece. And so, if you're watching this and you're a victim of abuse or a survivor of abuse, first of all, don't think you're the only one going through it, because you're not. Through all the networking and stuff I've been doing, I find that what I went through is actually, sadly, way more common than you would think. More common than I thought, even. And don't let yourself be isolated, because that's how they thrive. And that's how they survive. That's how they keep abusing. Because they make their victim think that they have no choice but to deal with it. That's what I thought. There were many reasons why I thought I had to deal with it. A big part is because of books I have been reading. Well, I had been reading at that time, talking about that I should be a good enough wife and pray for him. And if I am a good, godly wife and then I pray enough for him, he's going to turn and become this wonderful husband. I mean, basically putting the fault on me. Giving me, the way I was taking it was that if I'm a good enough wife and a godly enough wife, he'll get better and he'll turn and become a true Christian. And y'all, these books I was reading was almost more toxic than the relationship I was in. He was professing Christian, and at that point he surely wasn't. And because he could tout passages in the Bible at the drop of a hat, and say them in context of what we were talking about or whatever, but he was still taking them out of context. I realize that now. But he had all of this so-called Bible knowledge, and I'm thinking, okay, he is more spiritual than me. Maybe it is me. But that's what abusers do. They come off with all of this knowledge. Some of them are really good, and they're really smart. They use their intelligence for the way wrong things. But some of them are so smart that they can manipulate you and do something right in front of you and get you to think that they didn't do it. I mean, that's where the term gaslighting comes in. It came originally from a movie about a husband that did that to his wife. And it's like, that's what they do. They have you believing that you're isolated, that you have no help, when you always have help. Even if you are in a town where you don't have any friends or relatives, there's always help. All you got to do is do a Google search, and you will find how to get in touch with the local battered women's shelter, or the police. The police knows. But these abusers will have you not talk about it, because they will have you think that you're the only one going through this when you're not. I promise you, you're not. What you're going through, chances are, is the same as others have gone through. My ex was so manipulative that to convince me that what I was going through, what he was doing to me, was not abuse. He would go on the internet and pull up horrible pictures of women that had literally half their face was one big bruise. Or other women that had like all of this section, literally this section, one big bruise. Or stories, crime scene stories of women that had to get surgery to correct injuries from their abuser. And he's like, are you going through this? Do you have this? Do you have this bruise? Well, no. So don't even go thinking that you're abused. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's true. I don't have all of that. But here's the caveat. I had bruises in areas where people don't normally see. I don't ever wear tank tops out in public. Just, it's a me thing. I prefer to have tops even in the middle of summer. My tops have at least a short sleeve. I don't like my arms completely exposed. And he knows that. He knew that. So any bruises he gave me were like on my arms. They were fingerprint bruises. Literally, he would grab me so hard that I'd have fingerprint bruises. But they were in areas people didn't see. Only one time he gave me a black eye, inadvertently, and I sloughed it up. My boss even commented on it and said, he didn't give that to you, did he? Oh no, I fell on a stupid doorknob. But that was about the only bruise that anybody ever saw. Generally, if I got bruises, which he knew how to hit, that didn't give me bruises. He knew just how to hit, because I don't bruise easily to begin with. And yet he knew how to hit hard to where I felt the sting and I was hurting, but that I didn't bruise. And that's what abusers do. They know, a lot of them know where to hit, if there's a bruise, it's not seen. Just because you don't see a bruise doesn't mean it's not abuse. If you're watching this and you're experiencing things that you feel is abuse but you're not sure, chances are you're being abused. Doesn't matter if it's not physical. If it's if it's emotional, it's just as bad. as if it was physical. If the person you're with breaks things that are yours as a way of control or in anger, that's abuse. In some states, you can actually call the cops on that, and that would be considered abuse. Because my ex did that, and I didn't know that was a form of abuse until after everything happened, and I stumbled upon that somewhere. That, because my ex used to do that, I used to collect unicorns, and I had some of the most beautiful unicorn statues. And he knew they meant something to me because most of my unicorns had significance to it. One particular unicorn I got that I had, it was something my ex gave me, and it meant something because I was pregnant for my daughter at the time. And no, I had had my daughter, excuse me. My daughter wasn't quite a year old. And it was, I'm trying to think. No, I know what it was. I was pregnant for my daughter. And I got that unicorn that particular Christmas. I had gotten it for Christmas from my ex. But that particular Christmas was the last Christmas that we got to spend with my ex's father. Because the following Christmas, his father was in the hospital. And about a month later, after that, he had passed away. So that unicorn had that significance. It was like a reminder of the last Christmas we got to spend with my ex's father. And he knew that. And he always threatened to try to break it. And then a couple of weeks before he got removed, he actually went through and broke that unicorn. And he broke it simply because he knew how much it meant to me. Each unicorn that I had a significance. In addition to being a beautiful unicorn statue, it had a significance, like I just explained with that particular unicorn statue. And he would break the ones that had the most significance. We would be in a fit of anger, and he would say, I'm just going to break a unicorn. No, he wouldn't say it. He would just grab it and say, see this? See this? And he'd take a hammer to it or hit it up against the wall or something and break it. That's abuse. And like I said, I didn't know it when he was doing all of that while I was going through it. I didn't know it until afterwards. So if he does something like that, or if he demands to always see your phone, you know, you have a phone that you have a lock screen on it, where you have like a password or a gesture you got to do with it to unlock it. And he doesn't like that. He demands to know the passcode. That's abuse, because he wants control. Because that's what my ex would do. I could not put any lock screen on my phone. If I had a lock screen on it, it couldn't have a passcode. It had to be simply unlocked by swiping up or whatever the gesture of the phone was. If I had anything that had a passcode on it, he literally would threaten to break it if I didn't remove the passcode. or didn't tell him of the passcode. Now I want to talk about if you're a friend of someone that you think is being abused. I know it's frustrating. I kind of got a taste of that this morning when my niece told me what she went through. It was frustrating. It's like, how could you go through this when you've seen what I go through? But you got to understand, these abusers are master manipulators. They have their victims believing that it's all on them. And so they allow themselves to go through this because they feel that they have nothing else. That if they're good enough, that somehow things will change. Of course, things never do. And of course, you on the outside see that it can never change, that it won't change. But the victim is, their mind is so clouded that they think things will change. The best thing you can do is to just be there for the friend. The friend comes to you in confidence and says, I'm being abused. Let them know that you will help them move if that's what they're wanting. Let them know their worth, that they are worth not being abused. Make sure that no matter what, they know that you're there. Reiterate time and time and time again that, look, I don't care what this abuser is saying. I'm here. At the drop of a hat, no matter what they say, you are not isolated. You at least have me. Let them know that and reiterate it. You may have to tell them every day, but just be there for them. Because if they become convinced that they do have at least one person, they have a better chance of leaving. And if you're someone who you find out after the fact that your friend was abused or your loved one was abused and you didn't catch on, and you get mad at yourself for not catching on, don't. Because some of these abusers are like my ex. My ex wasn't the only one that was a master manipulator. Like I said in the beginning, I had friends that said, I knew he was off, but I didn't think it was that bad. I had one friend that was super close to both of us, and he flat out said, I would have never thought that of him. And he was super close to us. But that's what manipulators do. They have these masks when they're out in public that, I had so many people at first think he was so wonderful because in public, he'd open the door for me. He was always so sweet, always rubbing his hand up and down my back, like this is the back, and just doing like that, holding my hand. It was all part of the abuse, the manipulation, because it got me confused too. Because I'm like, well, maybe he's not that bad because look how we are in public. And even when his mask started slipping and people started wondering, especially at my church, there were people that were intimidated by him. I find this out afterwards because nobody told me about it, and I understand why. They still didn't think that he was that abusive. And that's what these manipulators do. They will they'll create an entire different scenario when they're in front of others to make them look like the partner of the century when they're actually dealing with them at home is literally hell on earth. And so don't be upset with yourself if you didn't catch on. Because like I said with my ex, not a whole lot of people caught on. And the ones that saw that he wasn't fully there still would have never thought of him as an abuser. So some takeaways from this is, one, if you're being abused, you are never alone. There is always somebody that is out there to help. Two, abusers thrive on secrecy. That's how they continue the abuse, is because of secrecy. They make you think that you have nobody to talk to. They make you think that it's not as bad as it really is. Chances are it's way worse than what you even think. I know that's what I'm discovering. And they make you think that just because you're not covered in bruises, that you're not being abused. Because there's always someone that's had it worse than you. And just because there's others that have had it worse than you, doesn't mean that what you're going through is not horrible. So don't be secretive. Because once I started talking to people, that's when I started getting courage and realizing, oh, wait a minute, this isn't normal. Because when I started talking to people, everybody was so horrified. Their eyes would bug out of their heads and everything. And I'm like, oh my, maybe this isn't typical. Maybe this is worse than I even thought. And if you're someone who didn't catch on that a friend or loved one was being abused, don't beat yourself up. Just be there for the person and support them now. So, because if you give them the support after they come to you, that'll mean they're less likely to go back to their abuser. So I'm going to finish this video. You guys have a wonderful week. And y'all stay safe in this crazy world. And hopefully, I'll have another video next week. Bye.